welcome to our uh, second lecture for the entrepreneurship course. And what we're going to talk about this week and what readings that I posted for you guys is looking at talking about mistakes. One of the things this semester and next, you're going to be, exploring to yourself whether or not you have it takes to be an entrepreneur wanting to own your own type of pharmacy business. But at the same time, some of the best ways to learn is through networking, through reading, through research, and learning out from others of where mistakes have been made and how to at least avoid or minimize them. You're always going to make mistakes throughout your career, whatever you do. But the most successful people in life are the ones that can capitalize and learn from those, or the ones that plan better can help minimize or prevent mistakes and future mistakes. So, the most important thing that you're going to learn this semester is to know pharmacy inside and out before starting a pharmacy business. How much do you know about the business and whether it is a traditional independent community pharmacy, whether it's a consulting company, what do you know about the business and the business that it's going to interact? How well are you in up to date of understanding our healthcare system? What other medical businesses, what regulations, from things such as the State Board of Pharmacy to Medicare and Medicaid laws to DEA laws. And in future lectures, we are going to explore a lot of these different areas so that you become familiar with them and understand that to be successful in business, you need to know there's a lot of other entities that we need to research. Other things that we will talk about this semester is we're going to explore about financials. And one of the things you need to know about in terms of being a successful business is obviously if you didn't want to go into business, you'd be more than happy to work for somebody, work hard, and collect a salary. The advantage that we talked about last lecture about what makes an entrepreneur, why do you want to be an entrepreneur? One of those things to be successful an entrepreneur is actually to have a profitable business. And so, do you understand the ins and outs of how to deliver the service, how to bill for the service? What should I actually be making on the service? Just an example, over the last 4 to 5 years, one of the things we're going to talk about things such as gross margin, operating expenses, and net income. And I'll go into more detail, but it doesn't matter what business you have, whether it's a pharmacy business or whether you're selling widgets, you're going to have different things that you have to look at. And so, for example, what is the gross margin? So, if I have a product or service and I sell it, that is my sales. What is the, if there's inventory involved for doing that, and what is the daily expense, the daily expense to do that. You take your, what you sell it for minus your inventory, that's your gross margin. And then to find out what your net income is, what is your actually profit your company is either going to keep or you're going to pay out to yourself as an owner or to your partners or to other people that may have invested in your company. You're going to look at your operating expenses and that equals your net income. Um, and an average pharmacy is making a net profit somewhere around, 2.9 to 3%. And you may say, well, that's a low percentage for net income. Well, you think about an average pharmacy, and not a real super busy pharmacy, but an average pharmacy that is in business that's doing $3 million in sales, that if 2.9% of 3 million is your net profit margin, that's pretty good. As I told you last lecture, about 90% of revenue is derived from the sales of prescription drugs. And these are older numbers, but one of the things we will delve into this semester and next in your business planning, how do you measure yourself compared to the business you want to be? So whether it's a traditional independent community pharmacy or whether it's some type of consulting business, we will work together in researching and teaching you, how do I find out? How do I measure where do I stacked up? And actually, how much do I want to make and what do I need to make to at least pay my bills, and that there is money left over to pay me and additional profit. So, how do I become successful and learning from these mistakes? Well, one of the things that I suggest that you think about doing, either now in your pharmacy career as a student or afterwards is go work for somebody who owns their own business or go talk to somebody who owns their own business and learning of how to be a self-starter. Maybe it's not a full-time job, maybe you just work relief somewhere. Ask those owners, how do they learn from their mistakes? One of the things that I encourage you is to explore of going to meetings in the future that may pertain to other people that own their own business. And a great place that I go yearly is the annual NCPA meeting, which is usually in October. And one thing that I come away from that meeting is not always the what I learn in the lecture halls, but what I learn outside in the halls of the lecture halls, of talking to other pharmacy owners, talking to other business owners, and learning what they're trying and what mistakes they've had. And networking, I can't say it enough that to be successful in your professional career, whether it's you pursue maybe not a pharmacy ownership, you go in the clinical route or wherever you want to go, networking is a key thing of how we learn and we become self-learners even after we graduate from pharmacy school. Things that you want to learn about, is, when I'm starting up a business, what are things that I need to know? One of the things that it's always said is we don't want to overinvest in equipment or space when starting out. We're going to talk this semester about how to analyze rental space. We're going to also talk about options of how to be able to purchase used equipment, furniture, and fixtures, and how you can utilize what money you may get in a loan or an investment to maximize and be successful in your business. One of the things that you will be doing this semester in some reflective exercises, and definitely next semester in business planning, is that you will be doing research. And so, what I'd like to encourage you next lecture, next lectures we're gonna talk about your niches and what you want to do with a pharmacy. But when we do our chat session in the next week, I'm going to ask you, to start thinking about what are some examples of pharmacy businesses that you foresee you would like to be involved in someday, or you think that there is something out there that is needed. And what you're going to do first is research it. Who's done it? Who's done it? How have they done it? How well have they done it? Some businesses that are new and created are the same businesses that have been happening all the time. But how do people do it differently? How do they deliver it different? Remember that saying I said, what do customers want? You know, they want to feel good and they want their problem solved. And what do they need that they don't know yet? Sometimes if you think about different things that you own or purchase, did you ever think 10 years ago that's what I needed? How are you going to market your business? How are you going to find out what customers, patients, and your customers may not always be patients. They may be other healthcare professionals, other healthcare providers. If you're thinking about a consulting business, what could you offer that answers those two questions I've said before? Makes people feel good and has their problem solved. The other thing that you can look in when you're thinking about, starting your own business is notice other businesses that fail and try to discover how to avoid repeating their mistakes. Looking at businesses in your community, what happened? There's a curse that's always said that in a business you can either grow too fast or too slow. If you grow too fast, you may not have enough, you know, stored capital to keep purchasing to deliver the service because you're not bringing in enough revenue right away. And sometimes you could grow too slow where you're not bringing enough revenue to even pay the bills for what you use to start the business. Learning, depending upon where you want to settle your business, and that's one thing that I will encourage you if you stay on for the next semester to develop your business plan, is that you pick the area where you foresee someday you would like to start a business. And you want to research that area. Who are the leaders in healthcare in that community? Who are the doctors? Who are the hospitals? Sometimes too, timing and location is important. Location is always important in a business, especially if it's a, brick and mortar type of business where people are going to walk in, they're going to drive to you. You know, Timing sometimes is, some successful businesses, they were right there at the right time that somebody was looking for that type of business. And how do you learn all these things that I've talked about in these slides is business planning. Researching and planning. That is one thing that you will become good at. The other thing you need to do is kind of do your own self assessment of yourself. Start thinking to yourself, what are your reasons that you want to start a business in healthcare? Is it you just want to get rich? You want to be famous and well known for your success? And that's okay if those are part of it. But to be a sustainable business, what are other things? What is your passion? What do you want to create a new service? And sometimes people are not satisfied unless they give a good try. I've had many different people who've come through this course and several over the last 5 years who've actually gone on and started a business. And I've had some that actually, by completing this course, had given me an honest assessment, talked to me, and said, "Thank you, Dr. Mayer, for sharing this class with me, but I've decided that this is not what I want to do. I do not want to own my own business." And that's okay too. But what you want to find out is you won't be satisfied unless you give it a good try. Whether you're exploring through this semester and next, or whether someday you try and start your own business. The other thing is that you always have to do in terms of business planning is finding out what will your financial needs be. And trust me, this semester will seem a little foreign, and this is probably where most students are hesitant, is learning financials. But I will walk you through it. It is like learning a new language. It's like when you first were learning medical terminology in starting in pharmacy school. That, financials are going planning is going to help you determine what is the income that I'm going to need to do to get through lean times. Greater than 50% of new businesses fail in their first 5 years. And as I said earlier, it's a double edged sword, growing too fast or growing too slow. Because, initially you want to have enough income to pay the bills while the business grows. The other purpose of a business plan is you forecast of when do you think you will be profitable so you can determine how much you're going to need to have either stored away or request in loans and line of credit until your business has reached profitability. And so, understanding your business of when will I get paid? For example, in the community pharmacy world, you know, I sell a prescription today. I have to replace that inventory tomorrow, but I don't get paid by the third party insurances for maybe 2 to 3 weeks. And so I need to really focus on my inventory control. I need to focus on my operating expenses so that I'm able to meet payroll, pay my insurances, pay my bills. And these all come with financial planning. And by business planning, along with financial planning, you can foresee what income you may need to know. A lot of these skills you will learn this semester can be applied to your own personal finances too, as you will be graduating and making a good income in the coming years. You will also want to plan. You may have a future to buy a house someday or want to do this. By planning things allows you to do other things. Who will offer the services and run your business if you need a vacation or are you sick or you have an emergency? So things that you need to foresee is staffing requirements. You know, what are the job descriptions? Who are you going to train to be managers, head? What is your backup plan? Those are all things that go into thinking about planning to be successful and preventing failure in your business. Is this business a new concept or modification or a new outlet for a recognizable product or service? So, in researching what you think your business idea is who is your customer? Do you have multiple customers? As I said before, example, clinical services can have customers such as individual patients. Maybe you have a contract with an employer to offer clinical services. Maybe you deal with insurance companies who are willing to pay you for MTM services. Maybe you contract with healthcare systems to provide a service. What is your new concept of your pharmacy? We will be having you research and think about that. And what I will be posting for a real simple reflective exercise is that I want you to rank what do you think are your top 5 possible business ideas that are maybe going in your head right now. It doesn't have to be perfect, it can be very rough, but that's what I want you to think about over the next week or so, and I will post that and give you ample time to be able to provide that. In fact, really, that is what one of our core things we're going to talk about in the chat session. The other thing is, when you're planning, you're going to research of how do you price your service? How do you be able to cover salaries and benefits, but able to make enough money to cover your operating expenses to make a profit? The last part of this lecture, and this is a very short lecture this week because these are readings, these are things to start getting you to think, is I provided you a good article. It's a several year old article, but it comes from the Wall Street Journal of going through top mistakes startup entrepreneurs make. And this is any type of entrepreneur. So let's look at some of these. The first one is going it alone. One of the hardest things that you will find that, yes, even a consultant needs support staff. There's multiple ways you can do that, depending upon what type of business you're doing. But one of the things you need to figure out is how many employees can you afford? What are some types of services maybe I outsource? Maybe I don't do my own payroll internally or my own billing. Maybe I hire a company to do that. And we'll talk about, depending upon what your business idea is what are those companies available for you for outsourcing. One of the other top mistakes is asking too many people for advice. It is great to ask different people who have had their own businesses, and I opened up this lecture talking about that type of thing. But one of the things you may want to do is create an advisory board. Maybe that if you're having a business idea, you rely on some people that you trust. Maybe somebody who's owned businesses in the past who understands about startup, regardless of what type of businesses it is. Maybe for your concept, you want to ask different healthcare professionals or employers that you trust, asking their opinion, would they be willing to pay for this type of service? Asking non-healthcare layman family members or friends, what do they think of this service? But you also want people that are willing to give you hardcore feedback. That is the other thing that I promise you this semester or next, is that is my job, is to be, to help mentor you in providing you advice and things that I can show you that may be good but may not be good. The other thing is, another mistake that some entrepreneurs make is spending too much time on product development, not enough on sales. If you look over the years of a BlackBerry, if you guys can remember BlackBerries, is BlackBerries within 10 years ago, the BlackBerry was the most hottest, you know, phone on the market. Now 10 years later, it is pretty much non-existent. And one of the things that was the failure of BlackBerry was it was a great product, but they were spending way too much time on product development and not enough time on sales, and also not enough time of listening to their consumers and what they want. The other thing is sometimes mistakes are targeting too small of a market, so sometimes you may have a great niche, and so maybe, for example, in community pharmacy right now, we still are heavily reliable on 92% of selling prescriptions. But as we try to create these new MTM type of niches, we need to figure out a balance so that we have more diverse services that will help pay for other services until they become profitable. The other thing is, entering a market with no distribution partner. All right. And a lot of times you may think about that in terms of people wanting to sell a product. But if you think about that in relationship to pharmacy, is that you may have a great niche service, like you offer great MTM services, but if you don't partner with, like, some type of clinical network or some type of health system, that you may not be able to distribute enough to make it successful and profitable. Another key one is overpaying for customers. One of the things that we will talk about in financials is budgeting. So, how much do you advertise? And some people under advertise, some people over advertise. We'll talk about marketing strategies this semester. The other thing that is a mistake is raising too little capital. Um, One of the things you may probably, most startups will request some type of funding, either from a bank or an investor. but you have to find that balance of what actually, how much do I need? Because if you overfund, then if your company is not profitable enough soon enough, or you're not bringing enough revenue, you may not be able to honor to pay for what you've overfunded. And obviously, if you underfund, then you may not be able to expand or grow when you need to. And you want to think about, how much money do I need to save? Now, obviously, I will share with you, you do not have to save, you know, all of it, but the more money that you do have saved, the more equity you have, and the more likely you are to be able to be funded and save that savings in case of emergencies. The biggest mistake for most startup businesses and entrepreneurs is not having a business plan. And for those who are in Pharmacy Practice 6, you already are being exposed to that. We're going to talk about clinical business planning. But it doesn't matter, no matter what you do, if you don't have a plan, you can't have success. The business plan that we will talk about this semester and next for the entrepreneur and wanting your own business is a little bit more detailed than the clinical business plan, but there are a lot of similarities. The biggest thing in your type of business plan for owning your own business is you're going to map out how does the business look, but you're also going to map out what am I going to need in financials, so investors may be willing to, you know, want to invest and also to do that. There's different articles out there all the time for Pharmacy Outlook. And I apologize, I forgot to update this. I did give you a newer article for 2017, but one of the things that is always challenging out there is how are we going to be reimbursed? One of the things I do this semester, I do an overview of third-party insurances for you and how do you how contracting occurs and how can you possibly negotiate and fight in terms of reimbursements, and we'll talk about that. Also, if you have a new type of service, we'll talk about ways that you may be able to get paid for that type of service and be profitable. So you always have to be keeping abreast of what's going on. I will share with you too throughout the semester some different resources to read that are not your traditional clinical pharmacy resources, but keep you up to date of what's going on in the pharmacy and healthcare industry. As I said, not having a business plan, always looking for the outlook. What are different positive factors that might be affecting healthcare or community pharmacy? If you look at, our industry in community pharmacy, immunizations has had a big positive impact in terms of making patients more and healthcare professionals more aware of other services pharmacies can do. And immunizations has been another stream of revenue that we can get paid not just for product, but for administration. Medication therapy management has been slow to grow over these last 10 years, but we're seeing a bigger growth in these clinical networks that are being formed, these national networks. We are becoming better in terms of our workflow in community pharmacy by electronic prescribing that versus taking verbals over the phone or processing paper prescriptions. We're seeing also, having ways to offer services to improve adherence through MedSync. And then, obviously, the biggest growth we've seen over the last 10, especially 5 years, is the expansion of Medicare D and the expansion of Medicaid itself under the Affordable Care Act. So, but as I said before, not having a business plan. And so one of the things we always want to be doing is researching. So I would like you to start thinking about what would I think would be a good business? Why would people want to use this? What is my passion? What do I like about pharmacy so far? What are things that I think are missing in the business of pharmacy? And those are things of what entrepreneurs do. They're constantly thinking about new ideas, whether you jot them down on a piece of paper, type them into your computer or smartphone, jot those down. Maybe you'll be able to flush those out and research those things. You know, because a couple things, you won't know if you don't try. All right, and what a business plan does, it helps you get off the fence. The business plan allows you to, here it is, now we gotta have to enact it. And then the other thing that I will share with you this semester and next is that you need to be flexible with your business plan. because month to month, quarter to quarter, year to year, things change. Give you an example, two examples. Say that you have your own pharmacy business and the chain pharmacy next door decides to offer free prescription antibiotics. Well, how's that going to impact your business? How are you going to counter offer that? Are you just going to knee jerk and offer free antibiotics? Maybe you're going to offer different type of services to justify why you do charge for your antibiotics. Maybe you have a family health club that even though they're paying for the antibiotic for every time they come in, maybe they have additional benefits. So there's ways to counteract that. Walgreens is a classic example of something that occurred to them over the last couple 10 years. Walgreens several years ago tried to take on Express Scripts, and the year before had taken on Caremark and basically said, we are not going to sign a contract for the coming year if you don't give us better reimbursement. And so there was a little game of chicken in the road, and Caremark caved in, and Walgreens got a new contract with better pay rate. They did the same thing with Express Scripts. Well, Express Scripts actually called them on their bluff, and so Walgreens opted out of Express Scripts. Well, this occurred before another major PBM, Medco, which is no longer in existence, merged with Express Scripts. And right after Walgreens did this, there was the merger of Medco and Express Scripts. And Walgreens found themselves in most of their pharmacies going from 1 year of having great sales to just in 1 month from December to January decreasing their sales to 52%. So what did Walgreens do? Well, eventually they did have to go back to the negotiation table with Express Scripts, but it took a while before, and they are not still in all those contracts. But what did they did? Look, they looked at you were still in Medicare contracts and Medicaid contracts, so they focused more on their marketing for Medicare patients and Medicaid. And if you listen today, what does Walgreens advertise a lot on the radio or on TV? A lot about Medicare. So always you have to be thinking about how you're going to do that. My last thing for today's lecture is to I'm going to give you different entrepreneur stories. And this entrepreneur story comes from a gentleman, CW. CW was a graduate from Drake University back in 2004, and so was his wife. And he had worked at an independent pharmacy 20 miles away from graduation until about May of 2006. And he ended up opening up a drugstore in August of 2006. Now, CW graduated. He didn't have an entrepreneur class like you are going through. He basically had some basic business training that he got in pharmacy school, but not enough. And one thing I will share with you, NCPA still has this. They have it twice a year. They actually have an ownership boot camp where you do have to pay for it, but it's over a weekend, and they go through all the ins and outs of what it takes to own a pharmacy. And so CW actually attended this actually in 2004 during graduating from pharmacy school. So one of the things we're going to talk about this semester is different ways to acquire a pharmacy. So one of the ways that CW decided was he was going to do what's called a junior partnership. And the way a junior partnership works is that you decide of picking a pharmacy that may be interested in selling in the upcoming years. And what you do to go to this pharmacy owner is you sit down, you talk to them, and you come to an agreement that you are going to come work for that pharmacy. What that pharmacy owner is going to do is going to draw up a junior partnership plan, and usually these average 5 to 6 years, probably no longer than that. And what the way it works is that pharmacy owner is going to pay you a salary, but you're going to probably get paid a little bit less than you would be if you were going out taking a regular, uh, you know, community pharmacy job. And what will happen at that end of that first year, based upon how well the pharmacy does and how well you do, there will be a structured bonus plan. And that bonus money that you get, you will take that bonus money and you will purchase a percentage of the company. So then the second year comes by. You own a percentage of the company, so that based on the percentage, whatever profitability you get plus that bonus, and you take that money and buy some more of the company. And the goal is after a 5 year span, you own at least 50% of the company. So what does that do? Well, that gives you enough equity to then go to a lender like a bank to purchase the remaining, or sometimes the owner of the store is willing to do that. Now, in CW's case, the one thing nice about junior partnerships, you also get ways to explore. junior partnerships also have outs. And so what eventually happened in this junior partnership, it really never took off. In fact, it fizzled out within the first 2 months. And the main reason why is the owner thought they wanted to sell in 5 years, but really realized they didn't want to. So CW moved on. So initially, then his next option was he thought he'd do an outright purchase. And so he thought instead of doing a junior partnership, he would just, he had saved some money, him and his wife, and they were going to purchase. And so they actually went and found a retail pharmacy that was actually owned by a hospital. And they worked very hard over the coming months to do it, and they thought they had a business plan. They developed a business plan, they thought they had an agreement, and unfortunately, as he put it, and when I heard his story, he said it took 8 months to finalize and 5 minutes to kill. And what happened was the hospital board voted to finalize the sale, but the hospital actually had an issue that was pending with the State Board of Pharmacy, and so the board revoted and decided not to sell. And so the primary reason of failure for this situation was politics. So CW's next journey was he thought he'd do a startup, and his wife decided to take their future in their own hands. So they basically they were from Indiana, Illinois area, so they drove around all the areas to find out little towns that didn't have pharmacies, and they also found one town that had two pharmacies, but had a very small population. And so they decided that what they wanted to do was at first they thought they'd pick up, go to this new small town, and start a pharmacy. But they decided, even though the town that they loved, which actually was close to where they grew up, had two pharmacies, they believed they could do it. So this is what they did. So they ended up opening up a pharmacy inside a grocery store and within that small town. And they did that because they realized they didn't have to have a lot of overhead space. The grocery store was willing, they wanted to put a pharmacy in there. They knew they were going to have to market. And during that time, with good business planning, the pharmacy grew. Now, during that time, actually, the hospital, which they had negotiated years before, actually had that pharmacy that decided they wanted to resell. And so CW ended up purchasing that years later and expanded his volume. And what he did was he merged the two stores. And so, the one thing that I share with this story is that CW, in listening to them, would not have been successful if one, he didn't go through some type of former ownership entrepreneur type of course. Two, he had good business planning to help him prepare financially and successfully. And so currently, right now, he has a pharmacy that's located in a high traffic grocery store. He has not much of a small front end, but he actually does specialty compounding, and he actually expanded into doing long-term care. And he minimizes of how many employees he has to equal to what his sales are and what his workflow needs are. So the biggest thing to share with you on that story and this lecture is that there this course is designed to allow you to explore your ideas. And so starting next week, we will be doing that. The other idea is that you want to be able to start thinking about what you want to do, where you want to locate. There's always people who are going to tell you you can't do it. There are always going to be people that, aren't going to be positive. And I encourage you to want to work with those who are. There's numerous ways to be able to meet the financial requirements you need to start your own business. Wholesalers are always willing to work with you to help offset money. There's different ways to get grants or loans for new starting businesses. Sometimes if you're a minority or a female, there's different ways. There's entrepreneur centers in most areas. And what we will do in the business planning of this course and next is teach you the financials of looking at how you can prevent cash flow problems and understanding financial management. We also will go over the key things you need to know about human resources, about how do I hire people, how do I do job descriptions, how do I offer benefits, how do I develop policies and procedures. And the other key thing is you want to start exploring what is my niche of my pharmacy business? What do I want to offer in my pharmacy business? So hopefully this helped you think about stuff. One of the things that I actually also will be posting to you is an example of a pharmacy business plan for you to read and review. And please look, I will be posting the doodle for the upcoming chat session. Thank you very much and have a good day.